Assalamualaikum everyone. Let me set context for this video. In this video, I will try to explain what are virtual machine. And then I will explain what are the internal and external concept we should know before trying to run these types of machine. So in that case, I will explain what are persistent OS disk, what are latency, what are throughput, and so on. And I will try to calculate cost so that we can have brief estimation before trying to run these types of machine. So without further delay, let's get started. So before explaining what are virtual machine, we should consider an example. Let's suppose we have our PC, and in our PC we have a specific kind of operating system. This can be macOS, this can be Linux, this can be Windows, or any other operating system. And in our PC we have CPU, we have GPU, we have RAM, we have SSD or hard disks. Then we try to run different kind of application in our PC. But if we want to run those application on the cloud, we need to take help from the cloud provider. What are the famous cloud providers? We can take example of AWS or Azure or any other providers. These providers gives us opportunity to run our application on the cloud, not in our physical PC. We can run those application on the cloud. So they gives us many types of service, but for simplicity purpose, we can take an example that AWS gives us EC2 machine and Azure gives us virtual machine. These are the service which our AWS and Azure provides us to run our application on the cloud. Azure gives us virtual machine. Okay, there are lots. There are different kinds of configuration we can set when we are trying to run these machines. So let's suppose we try to rent a standard D1 version 2 virtual machine. And what are the configuration here? We choose 1 core CPU and 3.5 GB RAM. And for operating system, we choose Linux virtual machine, or we can choose Windows or macOS. Okay, but the costing will be different if we change the CPU, if we change the RAM, or if we change the operating system. So if we choose these types of configuration, the cost will be $0.0570 per hour, and these types of virtual machine runs all the time, 24 hours. So the cost for 1 month will be $41.61 per month. So if we rent these types of machine, 1 core CPU, 3.5 GB RAM, Linux, then we have to pay Azure $41.61 per month. This pricing is not the ending. We have to pay more, but usually we don't know about these things. For this reason, our Azure or AWS bill hits the sky limit. We have to pay more for persistent OS disks also. We know our virtual machine has CPU, RAM, and it also has Linux operating system. And this Linux operating system have some core files. We have to run our applications. Our application has some binary files, have some libraries, have some configuration files. Let's suppose we have to run our Node.js application, and our Node.js application have some runtime environment. So these things have to be stored on some place, and for this storage we have to pay more to Azure or AWS. Let's suppose we choose a service P4 tier premium SSD 32 GB, which is the minimum. We can also choose a standard SSD, and the base cost is $2.59 per month. But this is not the ending. We have to pay more for some services also. So before explaining that, we have to know some concept or some keyword. What are IOPS? IOPS means input output operation per second. If in our disk user try to access 100 files in 1 second, then our IOPS is 100. Throughput, data transfer rate, the amount of data we are trying to access. What are latency, delay between input request and the fulfillment. So we should know about this keyword. Now we are trying to see the pricing. If our input output per second is greater than 3000, if a user trying to access 3000 file in 1 second, or we can say if in our application 3000 people trying to access some file, so in that time our input output per second, input output operation per second will be 3000. If there are more people, then this thing will increase. So if the rate is greater than 3000, we have to pay more. We have to pay $0.0052 1000 IOPS. If throughput is greater than 125 Mbps, then we have to pay more. Let's suppose in our application per second we have 5000 input output operation request, and we are trying to accept 150 MB per second. We have to pay $14.02 per month. Okay, so what are the pricing here? We have to pay for our virtual machine, CPU and RAM and Linux system. If we choose Windows, we have to pay more. For persistent OS disks, we have to pay $2.59 per month. This is the base cost. But if the IOPS throughput rate increase, then we have to pay more. But that's not the ending. We have to pay more for the VPN gateway. We have to pay more for the input output bound rule, load balancing rules. So in the next video, I will try to explain what are the VPN gateway and what are the pricing for that. Okay, so that's all for this video. I hope you guys like this video, or if you have any types of query or any types of suggestion, feel free to text me. Okay, thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.